Ba-bow, ba-bow, bow. Do-do-do. I think I'm just singing West Side Story now. Ba-da-da-da-da, da-da-da, ba-da-dee-dee-dee. I don't know what our theme song is.
Okay,
We're live!
We are live.
We are live.
Welcome to Up for a Challenge. Which episode number?
Number 3.
But if you want to be
Number
nerdtastic about it, it's kind of 4 if you count episode 0.
That's true.
Oh,
I need to post
see.
episode 0, and I haven't done that yet.
I see what you're saying. I forgot episode 0. I was still thinking of that as the pilot that would never, ever, ever be released.
Ever air.
You know, where before you brought me in on the show and you had I don't know, Charles Nelson Riley as the third person.
How'd you know? Yeah, that was exactly it.
The ghost of Charles Nelson Riley.
Yeah. Yes.
We couldn't get Paul Lynn, so.
Yeah, so. Budget cuts.
You guys keep talking. I have to drop out for 1 second.
Oh, sure. All right. So how's your week, Sarah?
It's been good, you know. I told you I've been making masks. I showed you in the pre-show. There's no need to show it again.
I know. Well,
Well, you think we should in the live? Some people can see them. I make masks.
Show them the mask.
This is one of my neoprene cat masks. If you like what you see, you can go to roguemasks.com and buy one.
This show sponsored by roguemasks.com.
Rogue Masks.
Sarah will cut me a check.
It all goes to the same household.
That's true.
That's true.
Very true.
I opened a business account. That was stressful, but really good. The guy, I had like the most delightful man at the bank, and usually the bank people are very stern, but he was wearing this like lovely blue powder suit with like a black and white bow tie, and he was from Philadelphia. He was great. His name was Dan. Thanks, Dan. You made my banking experience awesome.
Thank you, Dan. Was it with Wells Fargo?
It was.
Oh,
With
see,
Wells
okay.
Fargo.
I'm with Wells Fargo, but I hate Wells Fargo because they just they've just made my life hell for a year and a half. But
Why?
Well, it was just it was back when I was living in Georgia, and it was when my debit, to access your checking accounts, it expired, and it was time to send me a new one. I never got it. And so I had to go to like a Wells Fargo branch, and they were like, oh, well, according to this, it's mailed and blah, 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 blah. And so they would issue me a counter card, which was only good for 30 days or 60 days. And they were like, well, you'll get this new one. We've sent you a new one. And I went through this process for like a year. And it kept getting to me because I would forget that the counter card was going to expire. So I'd be like in the middle of checking out with groceries or paying at a restaurant or something. And all of a sudden, the card would be denied because it had expired at midnight that morning. Yeah, and so it was a year-long process of apologies. So, but I'm still with Wells Fargo. That's the thing.
Well, the thing is like credit unions would be great if like with our profession, we travel, and it's really hard to be part of a credit union when you travel so much and like go to different states, because then it's like you don't have that money. And like I know. When I lived out in California, Portland, it's when the Wachovia Wells Fargo thing was changing over. So I had to open a new account with Wells Fargo, but I still had my old account with Wachovia.
Right.
Because they wouldn't accept Wachovia out where I was. And the change...
That's the same thing I went through, too, because I was with Wachovia, which is how I got folded into the Wells Fargo one. Yeah.
Right.
See, I was on the other side of it because I was in Florida during that time. So it was still Wachovia in Florida for like longer than it was in most other places. So while Sarah was going through the other side of hell and you were going through the actual change, Florida was like, you got a whole extra year and a half.
Yeah. Well, like Georgia and Florida were the last two to convert because they had the more Wachovias per like capita, I guess. And so they were changing from the West Coast towards the East Coast. So when I was out there is when the change was happening. So I had to. And then... which is fine, and then everything switched over, and so now I've got this account and another business account. They're like, well, you've been with us for like 15 years. You can have a credit card. And it's like, I don't know if I want a credit card.
I just remember when they were First Union, and First Union gave out lollipops.
I remember the credit union that I belonged to in Albany, Georgia. It was actually, I remember it had great rates, and they had this fantastic program when I was a kid to get you to invest your money, and it was called the Johnny Appleseed program. And
oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and so I think you only had to, you had to open a savings account, and co-signed with a parent, and you had to put a minimum, I think, of $2 or $3 every month, and so you would go and do the deposit, and then you get a prize, and so you'd get some fun toy to incentivize saving. And so I remember I put quite a bit away when I was 7 years old in my Johnny Appleseed account. Yeah.
Right. We had something at the Phoenix Girard Bank. It was the Mula Mula program. And Mula Mula was this purple alien. He kind of looked like the one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater, but he was purple. Yeah. He had a green nose and like this like hat thing that came down. And like if you got on the honor roll, they would open up an account and they would put money in it for you. So like in second grade was like the youngest you could be. I was on the honor roll, and so they opened the account for me because they were trying to teach kids about savings. And like I feel like it was like you got $5 if you got all A's, and like $3 if you got B's, and it might have been more. And it would gain like a good amount of interest. Yeah. And so by the time I was 18, I had like $250, which isn't bad considering for the 4 years there was $5, and then it like grew.
That's more than I had when I was 18, probably for the whole year.
Yeah. But isn't that amazing?
Well, I closed it out, and I had to buy my first year of college books, and it didn't even cover that. So.
Yeah. It's just amazing when you think back to, as a kid, and even when you were handed like a $10 bill, and you were like, oh my God, there's so many things I can buy.
A whole year of tuition at CSU.
In 1948, sure.
Oh, okay.
But I even remember being at 15, and like my parents were like, well, do you need any money? I was like, no, I don't. And they would still give me a 20, and I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Of money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't want to just squander it.
Yeah. All right, I'll say the obligatory, kids today.
Kids today. But the thing is, I don't even know if they have programs like that anymore. Because they don't have Mula Mula anymore. There is this one guy from Phoenix City who owns a car shop. And last year, he gave $1 for every A that a kid made. And so at the end of the semester, every kid who got an A would get $1 for each A. And he probably gave out thousands of dollars, but it gave them an incentive of if you work hard, it like pays off, and because they don't have any other program like that. But I also think too, it's like, well, what if you aren't as academically smart? Are you hindering creativity? Because like I saw this meme on Facebook the other day that was like, everyone's creative. You're given a box of crayons in kindergarten, you're told to draw and paint and whatever, and then you get to middle school and high school and they switch those crayons out for boring books about math and science and history. So then when you get older and you think that you have this creative bug, it's not that. It's just that you've always been a creative person, but you've been told you can't give in to that. You know what I mean? And not that there's anything wrong. Like, I'm a huge history nerd, and I think astrology is fascinating, and like I don't think math and science is boring, but I just think that there's people who are really tactile and like want to express themselves through art or coloring or painting or something else. And I feel like they are smart in their way because they see the world differently, and we don't necessarily foster that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, just made me think.
You should be a guest on this thing we used to do, art technique.
You gonna plug your old show every time?
Yeah. I live in, what's it called? The past. Which reminds me of the challenge that we had this week.
Yeah.
And how it affected me. Would somebody like to set up what the challenge was for this week?
It was my challenge, so I'll kind of review. It was, in a nutshell, it was an idea to be mindful of those conversations and situations where you are wrong. An instance, an event where you are presented with contrary information to whatever position you have taken or whatever you had been insistent about, and just go, yep, I was 100% wrong in that instance. And say it out loud, acknowledge it, say it to the other person. And so that was the challenge in a nutshell. And I got to say, it was really funny. I was able to act upon my challenge within, I think, 30 minutes of us completing last week's podcast.
We were, within the day, we were having the same.
We had a false start.
We did have a false start. We were having a grammatical debate, and I called my father, who's an English professor, and I was telling him, and he said we were both right because it depended on the tense, and we couldn't decide what the tense was because it was vague enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But
the sentence was, all boxes cost 85 cents. And it didn't. Oh. And Jeff said, well, if it's present.
Is boxes a plural of one box, or is
it
was
talking
about
box.
a set group? Or is it
right, each box cost, that's what it was. It was each box cost, C-O-S-T, 85 cents. And Jeff was like, it should be each box costs. And I said, no, it should be cost. Each cost 85 cents. But it's because he was hearing it in the present tense, and if it was in the present tense, it should be each box costs 85 cents. But I was hearing it in the past tense of each box cost 85 cents.
Oh, I see.
Quantity. I was thinking boxes
totally
cost and box costs.
Yeah.
A box costs. Boxes.
But I was thinking past tense, and he was thinking present tense because the box is already made. And so I was like, oh, well, it cost COST, So anyway, we were both correct.
And you both held hands and looked deep into each other's eyes and said, we're both wrong.
Right.
Yeah?
That's pretty much what happened.
Wrong.
Kind of.
But see, and so, I like almost immediately last week, Jeff, when you were asking me what should we call last week's episode, and you were looking for title suggestions, and I threw out my first suggestion of what the title was, and didn't realize that's what you had called the previous week's episode. Like there were similar names, because instead of referencing what was upcoming, I don't know. So basically, I threw out words of something you had already called the previous episode, and then when I asked for a suggestion of what did you call that previous week's episode, you responded, and I thought you were responding with what I had just sent you, and so I was like, haha, smart ass, and then realized you had answered my question, and. Yeah, because you had to send another text. It was like, I did answer your question.
Oh, gosh.
Look at the above
Hold on,
text.
my
To be fair, I am
computer's about
rarely
to die.
helpful.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, computer emergency.
And so, did a cat get in?
She's going to get her charger because there's live broadcasts are exciting.
So within 30 minutes of issuing the challenge and us walking away, I had an opportunity to say, I am 100% wrong in this instance. And so that was, thank you, universe.
I want to know, of course, if, Adam, you had any other events, but I think maybe we save you for kind of last. If did you have another incident this week beyond that one? That sort of fit in the challenge parameters?
I did. Some of them were, I would say, smaller and maybe not as dramatic as that text exchange. But I will say, and again, I always tend to shift political, that I really appreciated Jeb Bush creating a moment this week that kind of fed into the challenge a little bit. For those that don't pay attention to anything, Jeb Bush earlier this week on Monday was asked the question, because again he's not officially a candidate for president, but was asked by Megyn Kelly from Fox News, knowing what we know now about there were no WMDs in Iraq and a litany of other things that we know now, would you as a president still would have made that same decision that your brother did in the decision to invade? And he said yes. And watching the interview, there's a little something, if you watch Jeb's face before he answers, and everyone was shocked.
In slow motion replay,
yes.
As you did over and over.
Well, yeah, but no. So then the next day, his defense was he misunderstood the question. And if you watch the video, I think that is probably true. If you watch the face, but however, rather than saying I was wrong and misunderstood the question, and my answer now is I would not have invaded, he sticks to his guns of I misunderstood the question, but my answer was true. And so then that wasn't good enough. So then the next day, his coming out with a statement and saying that not that his answer was untrue, but it is unfair to and dishonest to the contributions of all the men and women in uniform to the troops for us to debate these hypotheticals. It's disrespectful. And if you actually watch that quote, there's a fun moment where he goes, and all the men and women in uniform, mostly men, like he says that. Yeah. And everybody in the room, you can just feel kind of go, like gasp. And then by
I'm
Thursday,
getting tired of like these families who are like, well, let's just have the whole family run. Like that's what a monarchy and dynasty is. Like that's why we don't have that. That's why we have elections every 4 years, is so that we don't have the same family ruling us.
And so
does that sound familiar?
I don't know. I think everything went really wrong when we asked George Washington to be king, and he said, no. We could have had King George.
Didn't he do
King
like a
Adams.
thumbs up, thumbs down? Isn't that the way he answered? No.
I have no idea. I wasn't there.
It depended on,
you were
if
there.
his dentures were in, because he had several different dentures. So if he was getting fitted for new hippo teeth, he probably couldn't speak. So he probably had
I can't hear you for a minute because my phone just
So
rebooted,
by
I'll be
Thursday,
back
Jeb
in a
finally, in a very angry press conference, said, "No, I wouldn't have invaded." Like, and it's you should watch his final response on Thursday, and it's basically like, screw off. Don't ask me these hypothetical questions again. But
oh my gosh.
So I just thank you to Jeb Bush to creating an ongoing theater piece that addressed largely.
But like,
the
how
challenge.
can you get behind a president who can't handle the pressure and who is so wishy-washy? I mean, for me, it's like, you either know what if you can admit when you're wrong, then I think there's more respect, and then you finally say no out of frustration. What are you gonna do when North Korea decides to point its nukes at us? Like, you're just gonna be like, well, I don't want to deal with this. Well, too bad.
And that's again, that's largely where the challenge came out of last week. Is it was observations on sort of the political culture and and political figures being so entrenched in ideology and positions that they paint themselves in a corner where they can never say I was wrong. They can never say that, because then it admits a weakness that their opponents could exploit, or it just, I don't know. They're just so entrenched that they put themselves in a position where they can't say no.
Right.
But so what were you going to say, Jeff? I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know your experience this week.
Jeff?
I think we've lost Jeff.
Hold on.
Sure. Well, then I'll keep talking.
you hold on.
So now, I have been left alone on this podcast of three people, and shoot, I don't want to make it all about me. I mean, I guess I could.
Jeffrey's phone rebooted, so he'll be joining my part of the world.
Okay. Well, goodness. All right.
The technology.
Well, good. So we'll throw it over to Jeff. Get the cat. Get the cat. Don't let him eat the neoprene. I saw the cat sneak in.
Live broadcast. Amazing. Today's show is brought to you by a train wreck.
All right. So, Jeff, before I realized we had lost you, I was kind of throwing it over to you to hear a little bit about your experience this week and with the challenge.
I'm sorry, we have a cat yelling.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, so my experience this week with the challenge, actually, our weird little do-si-do that we just did of changing microphones and things going wrong is actually ties into the biggest thing that I took away from the challenge this week, which it was really hard for me to remember an incident specifically, because that's just hard for me to do anyway. Yeah. So I was thinking back and I was racking my brain, and the best I came up with were all really kind of lame examples that weren't really worth sharing on a show. Things like, well, back when I started using OS 10 and started using Macs, I thought, oh, well, Macs can't get viruses, or Macs are easier to use, and the truth is they're just different. But all of those are examples that don't really matter. But this week, having to think about each moment that was presented to me as with the question of, am I wrong in this moment, or am I continuing an idea just for the sake of pride or anything else in that moment, was really awesome, because it allowed me to be in that moment, which is, I think, a big problem of mine. And sometimes I'm either too far ahead of the present moment, or I'm too far working out a problem in the past that happened a few minutes ago, rather than dealing with what is in front of me right now.
I think that's a great tie-in to talk about what our challenge will be.
I had a feeling it was going to be something like this. So let me continue my story, and then you can get me with
Make
that.
you cry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a feeling. So there were just so many times this week where I was reminded of what's happening right now. Just like with the microphone thing. It's like, oh, everything's blowing up. I can sit here and try to troubleshoot the problems while we're having this conversation, or I can try to have the conversation. And at the end of the day, that's more important. It also inspired a lot of gratitude in me, and a lot of, I don't know, just joy, because for a long time, ever since a couple years ago, I have felt like I have been living my life through a glass. Like I've been observing my life, but with the exception of a few moments, I haven't felt like I was always fully participating in it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm there, but I'm not really there, and it's an internal feeling that I just couldn't. It's like an internal spark, like this, like a fire for life that I knew I was capable of when I was a kid, and I knew I was capable of up until somewhere in my 20s. But suddenly I was just like, oh, I guess I'm just this now, and that's where I'm at, and I don't feel things anymore. Like I just don't feel things, right? Yeah. And so going through this week and having to be in the present in this way, I learned that at some point, in my effort to solve problems, to stop things from attacking my life, to stop things from disintegrating or blowing up in my life, I became really anticipatory of what a result or an outcome could be. You know, kind of like how a guy thinks he's got all the answers, right?
Right, yeah.
And because I was in that spot, a lot of things skewed towards the negative for me, because it's like, well, this is probably how it's going to lay out. And if it's going to go that way, then what's the point? Why am I doing anything? And yet my actions were still, if I really felt that way, then why was I trying to, back when I was doing Polar podcasts, why was I trying to produce podcasts? Why was I trying to do this, that, and the other? You know, I was still acting like someone who believes that the things he did mattered, but I was feeling and thinking like they didn't. And that's part of the thing that led to the collapse of the previous podcast thing, was just like, none of this matters. No one cares. I don't care about anything anymore, and I should just quit existing in some weird way. Do you know what I mean? And just coast. And anyway, so to wrap it up, this week I made a decision to quit thinking that I have all the answers, and to approach things with gratitude and with excitement and joy. I mean, like, whatever's coming up next is going to be awesome and great. And of course it matters. And I am, I think, on the path to connecting more with who I used to be. And it's funny, because that person that I used to be, that was where most of the good results of my life came out of.
But that person's still within you. I think it's just gotten piled on with adult stuff like bills and time management, and
well, not just that, but it's just money too, and just
right,
not having any money, and just feeling like
of
you don't have freedom.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's still in you. It hasn't gone away. It's just gotten buried under some stuff. And so with that, Adam and I talked about
okay,
what would be really
I guess
good
that this
for
week's
you.
challenge is for me.
Yes, it's specifically
it's for me.
you.
Okay, it's for me.
And
right.
So we've titled it Choose Your Own Adventure Challenge. So,
okay.
Because you generally, because I'm so sporadic, and you like to have a timeline, and when things go off your timeline or whatever, it stresses you out, because if you don't know the destination or whatever, the unknown or whatever that you can't control, which is, like you're talking about, you want to let go of some control and have some more fun.
Can I talk about why that is real quick?
No, not yet. So this challenge is to help you go outside your comfort zone. So every day, at least once, you have to ask an acquaintance or someone you don't really know to make a decision for you. So like, but listen.
And it can be, we don't want to put you in a position where you're putting a decision that's going to be expensive and put a huge financial burden on you. But something as simple as, if you set the parameters of, all right, I've got, $7 to eat lunch somewhere. So I walk up to somebody and say, you could give them an either or choice, or, you know what I mean? Somebody that is going to dictate, an action, a small action in your life. And so you are surrendering completely to that other person's decision. Yeah?
So I'm hiring an assistant.
No, but it's a different person every day. So you can't use the same person twice.
So 7 people.
So 7 people,
and they don't
have to be total strangers. They can be like, someone at Starbucks that you kind of know, or one of the tech people that you kind of work with, but you don't really know. And you'd be like, hey, where's an inexpensive place to go to lunch? And then you go to maybe a new place, or you say it's between Moe's, Mike's, and something else, and they say, oh, yeah, those are fine, but there's this other cool place. Then you should go, because it's to sort of help you.
I'm tempted to try to secretly record these things.
You could Periscope them if you wanted.
I'm tempted to.
But, I think it would be fun for you. Or, because I know, when we do social situations, if we plan something out, and someone's like, oh, well, let's do an impromptu this thing. If it doesn't have good parking, or it's worrisome. And I get that, because I'm that way. I'm that way too, because parking in Atlanta is awful. And if I'm driving with the luck I've had with my car, I'm like, But I think, you're talking about the spontaneity that you wish you had. And I think this is a fun way to get you outside of your comfort zone. So it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and you're probably not going to like it the first 2 times. But I think in the end, you will see the benefit of saying,
so it's like
yes,
sex.
and.
Go ahead.
What'd you say?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Not with you.
It doesn't matter. And if that's the case, I don't want to know.
No, I was talking about, I was making a joke about, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But, because see, I can tell right now, for those of you who don't know Jeff is posturing in his way by being bumbling, because he's very nervous, but in a good way. And like Adam said, it's not our intention to completely stress you out, but it is to take little steps to help you.
Well, I'm interested. Okay, yes, I will do it. Of course, I accept the challenge.
All right.
I'm really up for it. The truth is, I hate making decisions. I hate it.
I know you do.
And the only reason I do it is because I feel like no one else will. And in most situations with your own life, it's not appropriate for other people to make decisions for you, unless you're doing something fun like this. I could use a little less control.
Yeah.
So,
because it's also hard, once you have it, it's hard to let it go. It's hard to be like,
Yes.
And especially, because we, in our life, get stressed out when we say we're going to do something, and then I know generally I'm the one who derails us, because I'm like, oh, but it's a nice day, let's go do this, screw deadlines. And I know that ends up stressing you out, because, you have a goal in mind.
Well, I live in the world where, in order to, it's stupid, but I feel like if you want to do one really great thing, it maybe means that there's 5 to 10 other okay or good things, or sometimes equally great things that you have to say no to, because you can only do, the idea of multitasking aside, you can only do one thing at a time and really be there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so when it's a matter of, oh, let's go do something spontaneous, it's like, okay, well, this means that all this other stuff that we were going to do, we don't get to do, and we don't get to complain about not doing it later, because we both agreed this is what we want to do right now. And it gets hard in my life sometimes when
but even now you're thinking about the end game, and I think
that's how I think. I think at some point I'm going to die. That's where I live.
But you're wanting to talk about more living in the present and the now, and I think this challenge is a great way to help solidify the things that you said from last week's challenge that you kind of want to get back to. So I think it really ties in of helping you stay in the now. That's what as the Buddha would say.
That's good. I'm interested. As the Buddha, what would the Buddha say?
Stay in the now.
I'm going to look that up. So did he say that when he went to QT and got a big gulp?
Maybe. Or what the turtle says in Kung Fu Panda.
What does the turtle say?
I know what
Yesterday
the
is
fox says.
history.
Oh.
Tomorrow's a mystery. That's why today is a gift. The present.
Ah, they also say that on Pinterest a lot, I bet.
Right, but the
I'm sure
turtle
there's
and
a
Kung
meme
Fu
out
Panda
there,
said
yeah.
it, and it was very zen-tastic because the turtle was the all-knowing.
Well, I'm up for this.
All
So
right,
there
I
we
think
go.
it'll be fun.
Is
I
there
need
anything
to
else on the
do-
plate for this week?
I don't know, but we are.
I think that was it because I think it's your turn this week, buddy.
Yeah.
It just because we've
This
each
is
had a
exciting.
personal one and a group one, I guess. So now, we're interested to
Right.
see how you break down under the pressure.
And then next week, Adam and I kind of came up with a group one that kind of sprung
Yeah.
off of yours. So we'll.
Great.
we
At this
can-
point, you guys just run the show.
Hey, look at him.
I'm
he's
fine with that.
He's surrendering to the now.
Right? Good on you.
Well, are we doing sign-offs?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Sarah, what's my sign-off?
I don't know.
See?
That was good.
I'm
It
going to
took me a
stay
moment.
here.
All right. I'm Jeff, and I'm going to stay here.
I'm Sarah, and I'm not.
And I'm Adam, and I got to be somewhere in 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, in that case, we should go off the air, which means I have to go to the other room. So goodbye, Internet.
Goodbye, Internet.
Goodbye, interwebs. That was a fun episode. I mean, chaos
agree.
aside, I thought it was great. We
But
were gonna get a
I
nice
think,
little
but
laugh.
it was a great sort of undercurrent or underlining of what we were talking about. So it was
was,
nice.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it's nice to have that. The cat just poked back into your room, is about to eat the mask. Go get
All
the
right,
cat.
Jeff, I can't turn mine off because I have a cat with me.